Danny Denton, a retired public school teacher from Sherman, Texas, who has spent 30 years researching the greatest cover-up in American history, recently discovered that history got it wrong on one of the most important prosecutorial decisions in post-war American legal history. Here is how that discovery was made. Denton had been examining a timeline that didn't make sense. Leon Jaworski, the decorated Army prosecutor who would later bring down a president of the United States as Watergate special prosecutor, had been assigned in 1945 to prosecute the murders committed at the Hadamar facility in Germany. Hadamar was where doctors and scientists had systematically murdered 15,000 mentally and physically disabled human beings in the name of science. It was the first chapter of the Holocaust. The historical literature said Jaworski backed off prosecuting those 15,000 murders because of jurisdictional limitations, specifically the absence of a crimes against humanity charge. But the timeline raised questions. On July 28, 1945, War Crimes Branch Officer Robert Mapes wrote a memorandum to Lieutenant Colonel Mize explaining why the prosecution would focus only on the murders of Soviet and Polish nationals. 11 days later, the London Charter was signed, establishing the legal framework to prosecute crimes against humanity for the first time in history. And Telford Taylor, serving on the American prosecution team at Nuremberg, documents in his memoir that from mid-August 1945, the committees drafting crimes against humanity indictments were already meeting regularly. The Hadamar trial didn't begin until October 8th. How would Leon Jaworski back off prosecuting the Hadamar personnel over an issue of jurisdiction when IMT prosecutors were already preparing crimes against humanity indictments? It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense because it never happened. Denton obtained the full text of the Mapes to Mize letter. Here's what it actually says. Although large numbers of German nationals were killed at this institution, the report of investigation and consequently this memorandum of review is concerned in the main only with the killings of the nationals of other nations, which in this case are those of Russia and Poland. This is so because there appears to be no substantial evidence that those Germans who were killed were not in fact incurably insane. The letter does not mention crimes against humanity. The letter does not mention jurisdictional limitations. It gives a specific evidentiary reason that there was no substantial evidence that Germans who were killed were not in fact incurably insane. Now consider what that evidentiary reason actually reveals. The 15,000 murders at Hadamar were carried out under the authority of a document signed by Adolf Hitler on his personal stationery. It was never formally enacted as legislation. It was never published. It had no formal legal standing. And yet Mapes concluded there was no substantial evidence the Germans who were killed were not in fact incurably insane, effectively treating that secret unauthorized document as a potentially valid framework for 15,000 murders. The historical literature describes that decision in jurisdictional terms. Holocaust historian Patricia Heberer, a scholar at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, cites the Mapes letter directly in footnote 25 as the source for her jurisdictional explanation. According to Heberer, Jaworski backed off prosecuting the Hadamar personnel for the 15,000 euthanasia killings because he lacked jurisdiction. The letter does not support that explanation. We can only speculate as to why a gifted historian would provide an explanation that is not supported by the primary source she cited. But consider what the explanation the letter actually contains would have revealed to the American public. It would have revealed that American prosecutors effectively accepted a secret Hitler authorization as a potentially valid framework for 15,000 murders. And that raises deeply uncomfortable questions for post-war America, because that same ideology was not foreign to this nation. In April 1941, while the Nazi euthanasia program was operating at full capacity at Hadamar, a Harvard anthropologist named Ernest Houghton stood before the annual dinner of the American College of Physicians and told the assembled doctors of America exactly what medical science needed to do. His words were reported the next day in the New York Times. Medical science, he said, must assume control of the biological regeneration of mankind by checking human degeneration through birth control, sterilization, and euthanasia, mercy killings. A Harvard professor, speaking to the American College of Physicians, advocating euthanasia in the pages of the New York Times. in 1941. This was not a fringe view. This was mainstream American science. Houghton's complaint was not that the Nazis were implementing euthanasia. His complaint was that medical science had failed to sterilize the mother of Alois Schicklgruber, Adolf Hitler's father. According to Houghton, the greatest human catastrophe of the past century was the failure of medical science to prevent Hitler's birth. According to one historian, by the 1920s, the United States had become perhaps the world's most eugenic nation. In 1927, the Supreme Court ruled in Buck v. Bell that forced sterilization was constitutional. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote the majority opinion. According to this opinion, 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. The Eugenics Record Office at Cold Spring Harbor had been the intellectual engine of the American eugenics movement for decades. Its director, Harry Laughlin, received an honorary degree from Heidelberg University in 1936, specifically for his work on eugenics legislation. The evidentiary judgment that placed the scientific origins of 15,000 murders beyond the reach of prosecution was not made in a vacuum. It was made in a country where euthanasia was being advocated in mainstream medical journals, where forced sterilization had been upheld by the Supreme Court, where the eugenics ideology behind those 15,000 murders was considered mainstream science. We can only speculate as to why the historical literature provides an explanation that is not supported by the primary source. But the explanation that primary source actually contains would have raised deeply uncomfortable questions for post-war America. Questions about how close America itself had come to its own forced euthanasia program. Questions that the historical narrative, as it has been presented, does not raise. The Mapes to Mize letter is available at the National Archives. Microfilm publication M1078. The Hadamar Case Files. Reel 1. Read it for yourself. The full details of this research are documented in a report entitled The Greatest Cover-Up in American History. It is based entirely on admissions made by mainstream credentialed academics, none of whom set out to support this argument. Danny Denton gives all credit to Jesus Christ for this entire project. Every discovery, every source, every connection, every door that opened over 30 years of research, Denton believes was opened by the Lord. From a Sunday morning newspaper in East Texas to the National Archives of the United States, this research has been guided by a hand that Denton did not always understand, but has always trusted. Denton believes the Lord has a purpose for this information. He is not entirely sure what that purpose is, but he believes it has something to do with showing the American people that the secularization of this nation was not a natural or inevitable process. It was the product of a deliberate struggle, documented by credentialed academics, against the Christian foundations of American life. That struggle succeeded, and the cost has been incalculable. But the Lord will not allow the truth to stay buried. And one day, in His time and in His way, every American will know the truth.
Learn the rest of the story at greatestcoverup.info.